Good morning. The Oxford Dictionary definition of a misfit is a person whose behavior or attitude sets them apart from others in an uncomfortably conspicuous way. After reading that, I went down a bit of a rabbit hole and discovered that, according to the South African Journal of Industrial Psychology, in a peer-reviewed study published in 2021, misfit is a negative, unwanted, unpleasant, and undesirable condition which is extremely incapacitating and damaging. This article goes on to say, misfit has also been likened to an organizational psychopathology, an enduring and negative state of mind. Really? Well, I say tell that to, say, Albert Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Carl Jung, Martin Luther King, the women who many didn't realize were the heroes in early NASA history, Dorothy Vaughan, Mary Jackson, Katherine Johnson, and Christine Darden. Or you can even say that to Steve Jobs or Robert De Niro. Let us not forget the original rebel, the original pusher of boundaries in our Western Judeo-Christian framework, Jesus. Without misfits and mystics, where would we be? Without people who live more in their minds or their souls than in the world, how much longer would it take to solve problems? Without people who are willing to push against norms and mores, who would take the lead? While I am not in the exalted company of any of the people I named above, I do know what it's like to be a misfit. I was born out of time with my family, not only an entirely different decade, but even a differently named generation from my siblings. I'm a member of the misfit generation with just a letter that stands for whatever, a variable with no known value, the unknown, solve for X. But it doesn't stop there. I was born over 2 months premature. As my mom told it, the doctor didn't think I'd survive. Her doctor told her to pray. She did, and the science worked, and here I am. I've never quite felt in step, partly because due to my premature birth, my literal steps are different, not normal. I used to try to hide that fact before realizing it's rather unhideable. It took me longer to realize that I couldn't hide it than you might think. Again, thanks in part to my mom, who told me over and over that I was no different from anybody and that there's nothing that you can't do if you put your mind to it. I find now that she was mostly right, except I can't do box jumps and I'm not a rock star outside of the confines of my own car. It's true that being or feeling out of step sometimes, fairly often, makes me feel a little socially awkward, but it also gives me an engaging life of the mind that rarely makes me feel lonely. I know that makes me a little different and lucky. I have reading, writing, and photography. I used to love to run pre-hip replacement, partly because it is such a good loner activity that also let me exercise my more competitive side when I towed the line at all distances. Racing is this weirdly great way of being alone while being somewhat social. As John Bender said in a different context in one of my favorite movies, so it's sort of social, demented and sad, but social. One of the reasons I love living in this area of Michigan is that the scenery lends itself to contemplation, to photography, to writing. I feel less at sea here, surrounded by water, than I have anywhere else I've lived, more rooted, like this is where I'm meant to be. My mom also told me that the fact I survived when they weren't sure I would meant that I was meant to do something wonderful. I think that's something that most parents tell their children, really. Part of me wonders if living in a place where I feel more rooted might lead to that something wonderful, something worthy of any of those names I wrote above. But most of me believes that something wonderful means being outspoken when something isn't right, working to right the wrongs, being open to forgiveness, leading with, and showing kindness. I have a couple of songs, both written in the 90s, that I consider personal anthems, words to live by. I'm going to end with a verse from one written by Natalie Merchant called Wonder. I think it sums up how I feel as a misfit and how I know it's okay to be one. Part of it says, "Ooh, I believe, fate smiled and destiny laughed as she came to my cradle. Know this child will be able. Laughed as my body she lifted. Know this child will be gifted. With love, with patience, and with faith, she'll make her way. She'll make her way." Thank you.